Which of the three factors you attribute to breaking India do you see as posing the greatest threat to India's unity? And how hopeful are you that we will find a positive solution to this issue? Asked by Rahul.
Well, in terms of which factor is the most dangerous is very difficult. The factor to solve the problem is, I think, awareness and re-education and taking control of our own study of history. The study of history has been outsourced. So I would say that the one thing I would attack very vigorously is the knowledge industry about India studies, South Asian studies, has been so much co-opted. A large number of Indians are in it, but under the umbrella and under the influence and funding and direction of ideologies and theories which are not very sympathetic towards our tradition. So taking that over is the most important thing we have to do. Now this has been my passion for 20 years, but I have not succeeded because you want to get leaders on your side, but a lot of our leaders are themselves misinformed and uninformed and more pursuing their own personal goals out of it rather than really being committed, whether these are, government or regular leaders. And then when it comes to the masses, if they were on board, then you could mobilize them to get rid of leaders. But the masses are into selfish pursuits, into who's got a big house and a car and making more money and things like that. So, and then those who do believe in the pursuit of Dharma tend to do it for themselves and do not see the bigger cause as relevant. And it's always easy to find some excuse why it's not my problem kind of thing. So I would say the solution to all our causes is greater awareness. My personal role is to spread awareness to a point where people cannot deny it anymore, people cannot be asleep anymore, and then solutions will emerge as a result of that. But I do not offer a silver bullet right now that says you just load this bullet and you'll be set. I think each of you needs to read this, read other things like it, get involved and mobilize 10 more people. If each of you could mobilize 10 more people in Houston, maybe a year from now we'll have a gathering 10 times as big.
Next question to Rajiv again. How can we help influence US policy using this book?
Okay, a very concrete thing you could do is there's about 150 or so US congressmen and senators who are part of the India caucus. That means they're part of trying to build relations with India and so on. Somebody could organize a gift giving of this book, get 150 copies, give it to each of them with a letter saying this is an important policy matter and we would like to hold a briefing for you and your senior staffers to understand this particular dimension of US-India relations which has not been represented properly, and what you've been hearing through your own sources in US Commission on Religious Freedom, through a lot of Dalit Freedom Network type people lobbying in Washington all the time, is one-sided, and you need to hear, in the spirit of democracy and freedom, you need to hear the other side. So if you were to gather in a room of this sort in Washington, and we do a seminar, and they give them each a copy, and give them some summary versions and some PowerPoints. I have 100 slides, PowerPoint slides that I can present as a workshop also. I've done that. So if we can organize policy makers to be listeners, some percent of them will be moved. Some of them are actually pro-India, but no Indian government has had the courage, because in the name of secularism, the government is so confused. They think that secularism means you cannot represent Indian civilization. This is tragedy. I was called to co-fund and sponsor a Sanskrit conference in Thailand in 2005. Because the Indian government, at that time actually the BJP was there or just lost or whatever, it was around that time. The Indian government would not fund a Sanskrit conference where the Crown Princess of Thailand wanted to start a Sanskrit college, started launching a Sanskrit journal, and thought the Indian government would be so happy because they thought India is their mother civilization. But India said we are secular, we don't believe in all these things. This is an attitude. So this is why this side of the story and this argument and these cases have not been represented by us. But the Americans are not the ones to blame. The policy makers are many of them very open-minded. If I sit down with one of them and explain it one-on-one, like this young gentleman, on how this kind of a thing is also breaking America, a lot of people are on our side. But we have not done a good job of educating them. So I am convinced if we could get the India caucus type people and other learned Americans, you know, like the former ambassadors and people like that who worked helping India various ways. If we would get them use this, and Americans like a well-researched, well-documented, well-referenced work. This is you know, every bill is huge because they want all that backup. And people go with op-eds, two-page blogs, 3-page petitions. It's taken very trivially. So the book offers an opportunity to make major impact in Washington.
I agree. Has this book been published in other languages, including other Indian languages?
Well, we have an agreement with a leading Tamil publisher. And my experience has been very unfortunate, disappointing with the responsiveness of a lot of people who volunteer and who offer to do work and then they don't do it. So this agreement with the Tamil publisher was back in last year, about a year ago. And so one of the major roles of my co-author actually is to be translating Tamil. So he's been doing it, and this publisher has agreed, it's done, then some footnotes are needed. Always there's some excuse. I still don't have a PDF with me, but I'm told it's ready. But every week I write to him, call him, and he says, well, next week I will send you one. So that is the state of the Tamil, and I'm hoping it will happen. I think it will happen, but it's taking time. Then, when I presented in Delhi, there were 2 or 3 separate events. In each of them, somebody volunteered to do a Hindi version. So, an advisor of mine, Professor Dr. Taryal in Atlanta, has taken the lead to coordinate with these people, and Dr. Bhudev Sharma, who was the founder of Waves in Delhi, is coordinating from that side. And they have organized a group and taken the responsibility produce a Hindi version. So those 2 versions, at least there's a good hope at some point we'll have them. And I've got an offer from Prasad Yalamanchi that he'll do a Telugu version. Okay. But I have not seen the details, but I would like to see that. So we would like this to be done, you know, and produced in that way. Now we have a Kindle version already. We have posted to iTunes, but they have not yet put it up. We don't know why. Takes them 2 weeks or whatever, but we have not yet, it's not operational, but our job is done, the e-book is ready. So we are trying our best. And you know, books of this sort, the mainstream publishers don't touch it. It is so contrary to the opinions of everybody, all their peers and everybody, they don't touch it. It is therefore, I have to import thousands of copies, put them in my garage and carry them around and depend on good people like you to distribute it. It is therefore largely, the job of the author in this case is not over when the book is ready. The job of the author then turns into all these kind of activities. So it is very difficult to market a kind of a book which is taking a totally contrarian position as compared to a book that were sort of playing to the gallery, telling them what they like to hear. And so many people, nice book, all these India books are like that. None of them, you know, I would one day write a book where I take on Shashi Tharoor and Pawan Gupta and Amartya Sen and Sunil Khilnani, all these guys, India books, exceedingly shallow in terms of their knowledge of Indian civilization. Their idea of India is, it starts with the Mughals, who bring in, you know, sitar and tabla and chicken tikka and all that. and then it continues with the British who bring cricket and railways. And supposedly, according to Narayan Murthy, when he was asked why are Indians so good in IT, rather than explaining that we have a whole learning tradition, he said thanks to the British for teaching us math and science. Okay, he said that. And then, of course, if everything good about us is imported, then naturally the Americans will bring us human rights.
You know, you have to give credit to Rajiv for just saying it like it is. You know, he's so blunt. He does not worry about, you know, being politically correct, and he's always honest and truthful of what he says. So we really have to give a big hand to Rajiv. This is a devil's advocate question. It says, evangelicals are reacting to the conversion of Americans to Hinduism by ISKCON and other organizations. What is your response to this?
Okay, I think there is, at one level there seems to be a parallel, but it is not a parallel. a deeper understanding of what is different between Dharma and the Abrahamic religions is the topic of my next book. And you have a flyer there. In fact, it addresses Dr. Menon's why question. Why? It addresses that question in that book. And I want to, in fact, invite you to have a webinar with me where we converse on my next book. But that's the next book. As far as a straightforward answer to this question is concerned, there is a difference in the conversion process, conversion logic, conversion in the whole circumstance. The American is not a poor person who is being told we'll save you with the Hinduism if you get, we'll give you food or medical treatment or get your kid into college, and in exchange for something which is very material and practical that you are otherwise not able to get, a condition is that you get into ISKCON. It is not done with inducement and pressure, and 90% or more of conversion in India is done under duress, which should be declared unlawful. And secondly, ISKCON is not part of a nexus involving Indian government, church, Indian temples, various think tanks, and a huge amount of power structure and the academics. It is not. It is just an organization by itself. But the Lutheran Church is a part of some of these Scandinavian government organizations. They give funding to them. The taxpayer money, part of it goes to the church in some of these countries. Now people think that the Christianity has gone down in Europe. For domestic consumption, yes, it has gone down, but its export has accelerated. In fact, you should never accept, when they say, don't worry, they're not Christian anymore, you should say they're not Christian anymore in terms of what they practice, but it is a form of soft power, international projection of your soft power via religion, which is a very important point Dr. Menon made. That religion becomes the alter ego, it becomes the second face of a country if its religion gets exported. So when people become Muslim and they're pointing towards Makkah, then it is Saudi soft power. And the Roman Empire never ended, it became the Vatican. Because it is a Romanized, it is without military politics and all that, it is ideologically, is their wavelength. The Vatican appoints every bishop in India. Every bishop in the Catholic Church is appointee of the Vatican, they can hire fire. If you're running a multinational and headquarters gets to appoint every subsidiary head, it's called a controlled foreign corporation because its control lies through that. So how can the Vatican be, the bishop in India be declared as an Indian minority when his loyalty and his appointment comes from a foreign sovereign state? The Vatican is not even only a religion, it is also a member of the United Nations as a sovereign state. So every Catholic church with an appointment, the head being an appointment of the Vatican, should be declared a consulate of the Vatican. There are legal ramifications. Because if you are operating a consulate, then you have to have certain requirements. They are not only considered not to be consulate, but they are given privileges as a minority. This is the point we're making here.
Okay, I fully agree. Another question. Now this is the counter question. What would it take to change the existing mindset of Christians in the West towards Sanatan Dharma?
Okay. The longer answer is in my next book where I'm giving them Dharma versus Abrahamic religion comparative study. Okay. I've got 5 major differences and on each of them I'm giving them a very strong dharmic response. It's a purva paksha, which means reversing the gaze back at them. That's what the whole book is about. I think that a large number of Westerners have already become spiritual but not religious, the term which become very popular as Dr. Menon, as Dr. Madhulal Goyal said. And they are joining a whole lot of these quasi-Hindu yoga, meditation kind of organizations. We missed the boat over the last 40 years to really make them solid Hindus. We could have. Buddhists, when a Westerner comes, they initiate him, they declare him a Buddhist, then give him part of the Sangh, and he's now part of a community. Westerners are groupies, they like to be part of a community. They don't like this. It is too much challenging to say, oh, you got to be on your own and just do your own thing. You need, because for 1,000 years they've been conditioned to be part of a flock. Somebody has to manage them. Centrally, somebody has to give them orders. It's like when I was working in some place, you know, something unexpected happens. The Westerners are very chaotic. They're very confused. They need orders. The Indian go around his own job, you find happy. You figure out. In fact, one of the chapters in my next books is called How the Two Civilizations Differ in the Way They Manage Chaos. The Indians are able to manage diversity, improvisation, which Westerners call chaos, but we don't think of it as chaos. So comfort with all that. So when you look at the West, they are a congregation-oriented, a group-oriented, a corporate-oriented, an institutionalized-oriented mindset because they've been brainwashed for thousands of years that that's the only way. So long-term yoga can give them freedom from this kind of collectivity, long-term. But short-term, we need to hold them with some such Sangha-like organizational support, which ISKCON gave. ISKCON was successful until they took legal action because it was getting very dangerous because ISKCON was being very successful. Until then, they were successful because they gave a group identity. Buddhists are giving that kind of a collective identity. Hindu gurus are saying that you don't need it. But Hindu gurus do not understand the Western psychology because in my house, we had a large gathering of Princeton day schools, mostly white kids. My children used to go there. So we had a gathering of parents and teachers that come back from India, from visiting an ashram. And the head of the ashram, I won't name him, but he's a very well-known Swami, head of this big, largest ashram in Haridwar. He was there, and one of these guys would come back, young boys, he'd come back from the India trip, was so moved, many of them were moved. They were all asking him questions. One of them said, Swamiji, how do I get initiated? And could you give me a mantra? He wanted to be a Hindu. And you know what this guy, Swami, says? He says, oh, you know, just close your eyes and say, Om Jesus. Now, the guy felt very insulted. He felt that his sincerity was trivialized. And little did this foolish Swami know that this guy is actually a Jew, and the last thing you tell a Jew is Om Jesus. So I think it is a naivete. We have a tradition called Purva Paksha, you study the others. But we should have been doing, our leaders should have been doing Purva Paksha of Christianity and Western thought and Western history and Western philosophy, and they would not be so naive in dealing with Westerners. Westerners came begging, craving to be included in the 60s and 70s. And we could have produced by now 20, 30 million white Hindus in this country, official white Hindus in this country. We could have produced had our gurus known what to do about them and not turn them away. Many of the people who have done U-turns and gone back to Christianity and back to Judaism after being practicing all these yoga meditation for 10, 20 years, I've interviewed them for a future book. And many of them said the reason we did it is we didn't feel that they fully admitted us and included us as one of them. That they turned us away. We were dying to join, but there was no place, nothing to join. They kept saying things like nothing to join or everything is one and so on. And this is the problem.
Very nice. I have good news for you. I have been told that the Q&A session has been opened up to further in another 30 minutes extra because there's just so many things that Rajiv will bring forth to this incisive analysis. And so, Bhavani, you should not point the time cards at me. Okay. This is a question from my good friend, Mr. Desh Kapoor. He says, your book is a great work on exposing the nexus. How can we create an institutional framework to counter it? What will be the main components of that? That was the first question. Second question, can someone else use the detailed research that you have compiled or collected?
Can someone else use?
Yes, can someone else use that detailed research material that you have collected?
Yeah, I mean the second answer is an author is always honored and delighted and happy if people reference it. So you can always quote references. I've given all my references. And if you need further details as part of your project, write to me and I'll be happy to supply you that. As far as the first question is concerned, an institutional mechanism, first we need to take control of India studies. We need to take control of India studies institutionally, which means Like the US State Department has a funding called Title VI, under which they fund South Asia studies. There are about 35 colleges which are funded to be part of South Asia studies. In India, there is no India Studies program with a strategic vision, or America Studies program, or Pakistan Studies program. We just don't have that international studies mindset in our education. So we're not producing the next generation of scholars who can be counted upon for this kind of research. So we need a whole HRD transformation to create a very nation-oriented, nation-building curriculum which looks from an Indian point of view to the whole world, including India itself. So this is what we need.
I've been told by JK that we don't have an extra 30 minutes, we have an extra 10 minutes. Well, thank you. Much better, we'll fly. This is a question by Pradeep Parekh, again to Rajiv. He says, the US Constitution mandates the separation of church and state and prohibits establishment of religion. Thus, is not the US government in violation of the Constitution when it devotes so much resources to promotion of Christianity abroad, especially in India? If yes, can this be reversed with a lawsuit in the US courts?
I think this would be a good lawsuit to test to get some people on your side who are anti, there's a lot of American groups on the left who are against this government role in Christianity. The mechanism they are using is two mechanisms. One is called faith-based initiative, which Bush started, and unfortunately Obama has expanded. Bush started this business that government, rather than providing social services to poor people, will give the money to the church and let them do it, which of course gives them power, those guys power. And this was debated and argued, a lot of opposition, but it went through. And that is the law. And what Obama has done, in a nutshell, is to globalize it, and now there's faith-based initiatives which are being done via religious organizations, which basically means mainly Christianity, to foreign countries. So now the US government, if it wants to do humanitarian aid somewhere, it can either do directly, or the USAID organization, which gets all this money to give, will then give it to another NGO, which is a church-related NGO. Second deterrent to all this is, to a lawsuit, is that they operate through NGOs which are hard to nail down. It's very difficult to say that this is part of the Lutheran Parivar. It is very hard to say that. Or it is hard to say this is part of the Vatican Parivar, this particular NGO. Because, they will put all their padres and all their theologians, those guys there, but those guys will say, we start our own NGO, we're doing our own work, like that. The burden of proof requires a lot of field work. You've got to go with cameras, you've got to go with to show their nexus and how they're relating. We have done a very big beginning. But as TRN said, it will take 100 dissertations, 100 PhDs to do more research on these things to really complete the whole picture. We've opened this door, but more people have to get in. So if a lot of data is gathered, I think there can be and should be litigation that the US is violating this by going overseas. Now their response will be a buzzword called human rights. They say that, the biggest people pushing through the legislation of human rights for the last 100 years for US intervention overseas has been the church. I've got several books on American history written by American historians, well-known historians, on the history of the church getting involved in the name of religious freedom and labor rights and human rights and whatnot. They pick issues, whether it is child labor, whether it is the role of women, whether it is to help these people or those people. They pick issues after looking at what's the potential for evangelizing worldwide using that issue. So they pick a social issue, then they brand it, they do a lot of research for many years and they lobby to get it as part of a human rights. So US response typically would be that, look, we are giving some faith-based initiative through independent NGOs, and we don't know if they're part of the church or not, but we are not aware of it, and we are doing human rights intervention because it's good for human rights, and if that intervention is helping out the church, we don't know about it. I talked to the Indian, whom I named in the book, but don't want to now, who was representing Hinduism, so to speak, supposedly, in this Obama administration on this issue. And I really take her to task in this book for being complicit on this. And her response was that, I can't do anything because they are saying that, since we don't have proof that it is being misused. So the burden of proof given to us is very high. But the burden of proof for others to accuse Hinduism is very low. All it takes is a few people there to claim that something has happened. There is no court ruling. There is no independent verification. It shows up in a few church newsletters and gets quoted enough times that it becomes fact. And then it comes to the US Congress and it is taken as fact. So much of the evidence that the US Congress has relied on in the commission report is unsubstantiated and uncorroborated, we point out in this book.
Excellent. From your research, this is a question from Sudesh. He says, from your research, I would like to know when historical discourse for caste discrimination started. Was it prior to British India?
Well, caste is an exceedingly complicated problem. There are no simple answers. You will get many answers to all of this. There is certainly jati varna, no caste, jati varna for a very long time. And there is certainly discourse of both kinds. If you want to prove that there is a varna flexibility and jatis can move up and down the economic strata, you will find a lot of evidence of that. You will find a lot of evidence of certain jatis that were doing very well, and then during economic bad times they got downgraded. You will find a lot of evidence of people who are Shudras becoming Brahmins and becoming great learned scholars. You will find evidence of that kind, of fluidity, flexibility, and against birth-based fixation. But you will also find evidence of the kind where there has been prejudice. And so in pockets there has been prejudice. Even today there are some Shankaracharyas who will tell you right away that they believe in birth-based caste, and they will tell you that. So you will find segments of Dharmic society which are very fluid and mobile throughout history, and you will find segments that are not. But what the foreign people did is they took the segment which was not so fluid, took that interpretation, tried to standardize it, and tried to make it into a kind of a homogeneous approach to managing India in this hierarchical way. So you cannot say that they invented the caste system. They took certain aspects. It's like if 5 of us sitting here are of different wavelengths on a certain issue, and somebody picks one guy and says that's the one that suits, and I'm going to impose it on everybody. That's how the current caste system came about, by privileging certain interpretations and certain views and tampering with the internal fluidity that had existed.
Excellent. We have another 5 questions. This is from Dr. Rudhanath Talukdar. He says, what in your opinion is a major factor or factors which hampers unity of Hindu activism?
I think there's so many factors involved, but I would say some of the major ones are, we have not produced leaders who are selfless and really educated and qualified and well-read. I find very few of the Hindu leaders that I go around have read, I have even the capacity to read large books, large volumes. But we are up against opponents who are producing knowledge, and they are highly educated and they're very well-read on Indian sociology and Indian kind of stuff. Whereas our own leaders want a 2-page brief, their attention span is 10 seconds, they're probably, with this, moving their remote control around kind of mindset, So the old age of serious thinking, serious research, long-term investment is not found in that many leaders of ours. This is a very serious issue. And I think the spiritual leaders, the religious leaders have become too myopic. They're only interested in their own particular organization being okay. And they're not looking at Hinduism at large. In fact, I was a speaker at the 25th anniversary of the Arshidvidya Gurukulam, just last month. And Swamiji blessed this book, put it up there, told everybody, you must read it. By the way, Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji is the one who launched the book first in Chennai. And I would say among all the supporters I've had over the last 10-15 years, he's always been #1. And every so often he calls and wants to know how is it doing, and are we doing enough to spread it. And if you go to the breakingindia.com under videos, just click under videos, you'll see many videos. See Chennai launch, you'll see Swamiji's talk there. So in that, the reason I mention this is that in this Arshidvidya Gurukulam talk I gave, I made this point that the first, in modern times, true ambassador of all of Hinduism went globally was Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda. That he didn't go for one organization, he went for the whole thing. In my lifetime, when I was a kid, Swami Chinmayanand, I used to go to Connaught Place in Delhi, and all of summer long he would teach Gita. Every year my parents would take us to learn Gita from Swami Chinmayanand. He became Hinduism's ambassador at large and didn't worry about whether it's for his organization or it was for Hinduism overall. And then I made the point that today that mantle has been taken over by Swami Devananda Saraswati. And this task is very difficult because a lot of Swamis don't want to be part of this. A lot of them, they look at, okay, how are my numbers, what's my bottom line, am I doing fine? And, they're doing that. A lot of Hindu Mandir organizations don't want this discussion. I mean, it's as if the whole teaching of what Mahabharata has to tell us is irrelevant today. We just do some rituals which to people of my kids' generation who are raised in this country look like voodoo. Look like voodoo. They're saying, Dad, why would we go and watch this guy doing some voodoo? Because he's not telling us what it means. He's not explaining anything. It makes no sense to us. So why the temples have become these places where quick they do some ritual is because it's fast money. It's easy to say, okay, give me $101, we'll do this ritual for you. Whereas investing in learning and serious discourse and teaching is full of controversy, it's full of challenges, you will be criticized, you have to handle it, you have to be knowledgeable enough to do it, and at the end of the day, there's not money spinning. So our gurus in most cases, our temples in most cases have failed us as far as protecting the Dharma in society. So if I may, what we need is a consumer revolt, which means the public is the one who gives the money. If they are the consumers, and like Gandhi was one of the pioneers of consumer revolt, saying, okay, we won't buy their cloth, we make our own. So it's the consumers, the public, who go to a temple, who have to start demanding that we want knowledge from you, we want discourse from you, we want to know about the international Kurukshetra of our tradition and what is our Purva Paksha of Christianity and of Enlightenment tradition and Marxism. We need to know that.
This ties in with another question from Dr. Priya Balakrishnan. She says, does the response to these threats have to be a collective effort or an individualistic effort? And are there bad consequences to an organized collective response? And is the individualism of the Hindus due to Advaita?
Well, firstly, the individualism due to Advaita is misunderstood. Arjuna is told to go fight. There would be no Mahabharata if he were told that you have to pursue your own moksha and don't worry about all this, it's all mithya. This is a very common misunderstanding of Vedanta. That Vedanta tells you to run away, tells you to escape because after all it's all mithya. I had a doctor telling me all that, so I said, instead of when you are required to give 10 milligrams, if you give 100 milligrams, what's wrong? It's only shunya. So he says, no, it could kill the guy. I said, okay, but whether he's dead or alive, it's the same, it's all mithya. So he said, that could have consequences. I could be sued, I could end up in jail. I said, whether you are jail or free, it's the same. So this business about Advaita teaches us not to be organized is not true. This is, again, a foreign intervention. I have not written in this book, but I am writing on this. That the interpretation of Vedanta equals kind of escapism, non-action, running away, too much nivritti mark. This kind of emphasis has been encouraged during colonial times because it could be looked at as clean Hinduism. Whereas a lot of other things were so un-Abrahamic and couldn't be accepted by the Abrahamic people, especially Tantra, for example, or anything that has to embody the body. That Hindus started realizing that in order to survive, as a survival strategy, we dish out the kind of Hinduism they'll accept, which is colonization. You get colonized when you accept the colonizer's model of who you are. So this escapist Vedanta came out of that. But prior to that, if you look at the Hindu kings, how they were ruling, There were Kshatriya kings for a long time. If you look at the Harappan civilization, we have books on ancient Indian history of science and technology. We have a few volumes left. The material progress was huge in the Harappan civilization, and the progress of India in metallurgy and in textiles and in agriculture and in medicine, none of that is escapist. They're all this worldly, practical, physical, material benefits that our civilization also produced. So ours is a civilization where we did not have a clash between earthly living and transcendental pursuit. We also learned the art of earthly living in a dharmic way. So it is not that you have to...
I'm going to ask you 3 questions and you're free to answer any of them because we don't have time.
Sure.
First question is, how do you fix the non-results oriented approach of Hindu organizations? Because it seems that the Hindu organizations do not want to be held accountable for anything. True. Second one, can you comment on the book Jesus Lived in India? 3, is the presence of certain elements in Indian polity a catalyst to the Christian appropriation of the Dravidian and Dalit movements?
So the first and third are already touched upon. Yes. Second one is an interesting one. Did Jesus live in India? I don't know because I wasn't there. But the proposition is dangerous for Hindus. It is dangerous for Hindus and it is being sneaked in and promoted by a lot of Hindus because it allows the Hindu one more excuse not to have any distinctiveness of identity. He can say, but you know, if I convert, Jesus is also one of us only. You know. It is one more way to bring down the barrier of difference so that it's easy to bridge the bridge and convert people. Like this is called inculturation. So they have these church people going around in saffron, barefoot, wearing malas, doing arti to Jesus, and giving prasad from Mother Mary. This is all going on in India. And a lot of Hindus are so confused, including some of the gurus are saying it's the same thing. I get good mala, and it is Mary Devi, and I get prasad. So to use Hindu symbols and similarities and familiarities and so on, it's called the Gospel of Jesus inside, with the Hindu coating and the Indian culture outside. That is how it is being marketed. So this business of Jesus as Devata, as Jesus as a yogi, become very common and very fashionable for Indians also to talk about. I think this book, next book you should read, because I describe very clearly, and I've been churning this for 20 years and I've written this book. I describe very clearly because I have so many Christian friends who really are very sincere about wanting to unify, merge, to be both and all that. So I answer very clearly what are the compromises to the Christian doctrine necessary to be Hindu compliant. This I have answered. What is the definition of Jesus we have to accept in order to welcome him as a Devata? And what about Jesus which is necessary in the church is a violation from our point of view. Yeah? So, to give a hint of this, just a hint and then I'll close. You heard of the Christian good news.
Yes.
It means God has come to send his son to save you. So when they come to my house, knock at the door and they want to talk, I always welcome them, give them chai, nice talk. I always pretend like I'm a Naik guy, and they feel very happy. They, oh, we got a nice guy, now we can get it. So after a while, they ask me, have you heard the good news? So I said, what good news? Maybe your stock market gone up. So they tell me this, oh, salvation, we can be saved. Have you been saved? So I say, well, what saved from what? So then they have to, I back them into talking about original sin. Because salvation is from original sin. So then I say, oh, that's what it is. So I have good Hindu news for you. Hindu good news. So they say, what is that? I said, there is no original sin because we are all originally divine.
incisive and very witty answers. Unfortunately, we couldn't accommodate all the questions. And for those who are interested in not only purchasing this book and getting it autographed by Rajiv, but also interested in what the next book is going to be, you can see flyers on our desk outside when you leave. Please pick them up.